Hey everyone, it's Ahmed. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Field Between. We wanted to do something a little bit special for Eid and the end of Ramadan, so we're releasing this episode a little early. In the first half, you're going to hear kind of a silly little audio sketch that I produced with the help of some friends. And then Yasmine is going to interview a good friend of ours about the topic of Muslim Futurism. So, Eid Mubarak. Hope you enjoy.
The Crypto-Caliphate presents Techno-Jahannam. Written and produced by Ahmed Amer. Voice acting by Corey Reid and Jonathan Kear. Ads written and voice acted by Yasmine Flodin-Ali and Ahmed Amer.
Interior, palace bedroom, day. As the palatial bedroom curtains are drawn, the golden sunrise casts a glistening prism of light onto a Swedish craft bed made of horse. It's the same bed that Drake has, by the way, but this one is bigger and made with even more horse. Sleeping Prince Mohammed bin Salman is gently roused into waking by the warm kiss of the sun's warming kiss. MBS checks his wrist.
Oh, weird. My 24-karat gold Apple Watch is missing. I guess I'll buy a new one.
The massive Venetian doors open. A clinking, beeping robot wheels itself in.
Who are you? What's going on? Did you steal my watch?
The metal monstrosity halts.
I am ImmigrantBot. I am your subscription service-based servant
ImmigrantBot? So you're a robot?
and an immigrant.
You're not a guy in a suit. Is this a prank? Am I really talking to a real robot?
Negative. This is not a prank, my prince. It is the year 2075. Immigrant bots have served the Saudi royal family for almost 3 decades.
2075? How is... What?
My prince, it is time for your breakfast. Here is your morning breakfast pill.
ImmigrantBot produces a single pill.
Oh, hey, neat.
My prince, I was unable to complete the hourly renewal of your Royal Palace subscription package. Please relink your DeanCoin account before your subscription expires in 5 minutes.
What is DeanCoin?
DeanCoin is the first spiritually backed Muslim currency mined through Muslim-style prayer. DeanCoin is the only currency of the Crypto-Caliphate.
Let me get this straight, robo-immigrant.
ImmigrantBot.
Whatever. You're saying we live in a world where prayer is money?
Affirmative.
Well, that sounds pretty sweet. I can't think of a single downside. Let's pray.
MBS prays 2 rakahs.
All right, how much DeanCoin was that?
0. It seems you are missing your 24-karat gold Apple Watch, which is needed to track your prayers.
I know. I'll just get a new one.
You must go to the Apple Store in Neom and acquire a new 24-karat gold Apple Watch.
Can't you just go for me?
Your Royal Palace subscription package has expired.
Fuck!
ImmigrantBot transforms, showing its gun arms and chest cannon. MBS is escorted outside of the palace where he sees a Rolls-Royce. Standing next to it, another ImmigrantBot. This one is dressed in a penguin tail tux and a cap, much like a chauffeur.
Can you take me to the Apple Store, Neom?
Negative. I serve the prince. You are no longer the prince.
Yes, I am. I just lost my watch. What's up with you ungrateful immigrant bots?
Deposition detected. Threat level assessment. Journalist must engage with
Hostility.
The chauffeur bot transforms into a turret.
Okay, fine. Could you at least tell me how to get to Neom from here?
You can take the free public Tesla transit.
We made transit free with Tesla? That's actually pretty cool.
MBS walks to the nearest pickup spot. He's surprised and delighted to see a Tesla Model X appear shortly after his arrival. His relief turns to apprehension as the car gets closer, and he sees it looks and sounds rather creaky.
Well, I guess this is some sort of divine humility I'm experiencing. Yes, a spiritual journey. Allah must be testing me, and I must be resolute. How the fuck do I open the door on this thing?
After fondling the passenger side door for several seconds, Brody, who looks like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, gets out of the driver's side and forces the gull wing door open.
Finally, a real immigrant.
Where are we off to, Your Excellency?
I need to go to the Apple store in Neom. Quickly.
Right away, sir.
The car takes off. Elon Musk appears in the center display.
Hi there, it's Elon. And though I'm on Mars, celebrating my clone-anniversary, allow me to welcome you to Tesla Taxi, Saudi Arabia's free public transit for the monetarily challenged. Through this epic partnership, we've made our totally cool, non-combustible cars available free of charge. So just sit back, relax, and enjoy these mandatory ads.
Halt! Step away from the frying pan. You are under arrest for consuming pork products.
It's not pork, I swear. It's halal. It's from a lab, not from a pig.
Nice try. Tell it to the judge.
Here, have a taste.
What? This can't be. It's impossible.
It's oink possible.
Oink possible.
Between halal and haram, there is a lab where pork is halal because it's grown in a petri dish.
Halal never tasted so haram.
Oink possible.
Oink possible.
Oink possible.
Oink possible.
Oink possible.
Don't wait. Get your Oink Possible today.
MBS looks out the window.
Wow, this place looks a little dead. Where are we?
We're in Neom, sir.
Neom? This can't be Neom. The streets are supposed to be made of marble. Where are the palm trees and the fountains? There's supposed to be a jungle with real tigers right over there. Where's the ski resort? Where are all the people? They're supposed to be shopping.
Most people just send their immigrant bots to do their shopping for them. But a lot of them actually live here, too, sir. But they're underground, in the logistics layer of the city.
That sounds awful.
The Tesla sputters along.
Hey, there's the Apple store. Pull over.
Sure thing, Your Excellency.
Hey, I said pull over. We're gonna miss it.
I'm trying, sir. Sometimes these cars just have a mind of their own.
I command you to pull over at once.
The steering wheel flies off and the car accelerates past the Apple store.
Don't worry, sir. This actually happens more often than you'd think.
What do you mean? They haven't figured out the steering wheel technology yet?
Well, Elon says they're very close to reinventing it, sir, and that it's gonna be very, epic.
We need to turn around now. I need to get a new watch or else I won't be Prince again.
Sir, I suggest we just ride this one out, and inshallah, we will figure it out.
What was that?
Oh, that was my watch letting me know I just mined 1/1000th of a Dean coin when I said inshallah.
So you have Dean Coin too?
Oh yeah, sir. But apparently due to unrighteous intonation, my prayers do not count as much as your excellencies. I can pray 50 times a day, but I will never make what you make, because my prayers are not as good. You must have been chosen by Allah.
Brody, you're right. I think Allah has chosen to test me today. There must be a very important lesson I have to learn. But first, I need my 24-karat gold Apple Watch.
With the shopping district well behind them, the Tesla forges into the desert. MBS sees something on the horizon.
Subhanallah. It's taking us to Mecca. This is incredible. You see it? There, the Kaaba. Truly, this is from God.
Sir, that is not the Kaaba.
What are you talking about? Do you not see the giant cube on the horizon?
Yes, sir. This is the Muqab.
Let's go there. There's definitely got to be an Apple store in there. You know, it's big enough to fit
42 Empire State Buildings. Yes, sir.
Exactly. What a marvel. Brody, I need you to do whatever it takes to get us there.
No problem, sir. The car is headed in that direction. Perhaps it is a sign from Allah.
The Tesla comes to an abrupt halt.
What's happening?
I believe the car is dead, sir. Kaput. stalled out.
Hey, the doors are locked.
Hi there. Looks like your Tesla's self-immolation feature is about to start. Don't worry, we're working very hard on it, and our engineers should have it figured out by Q2. And it will be very epic when the car does not catch fire spontaneously. Please allow us to show you one more ad, and then you'll be free to go. Insha'Allah.
Hey there. Are your urges getting the better of you? Do you want to have non-marital sex, but afraid of getting another lashing? Do you want the boning without the stoning? Introducing ImmigrantBot, your paradisal servant in this dunya. ImmigrantBot is a perfectly proportioned humanoid, and it is eager to fulfill your every fantasy. Unlike today's women, ImmigrantBot does not have any desires of its own.
Spank me or not, the choice is yours.
It's sexy, virginal, and does not possess a clitoris. So there's no more fuss about the myth of the female orgasm. Best of all, ImmigrantBot is Islamically permissible. Because ImmigrantBot is genderless, it can easily be incorporated into any marriage or fantasy.
I am binary sexual 00011011100.
So, what are you waiting for? Call 1-800-NO-ZINA today. Thick opinions on ImmigrantBot may vary. You may not marry your ImmigrantBot. If you refer to your ImmigrantBot with male pronouns, you will be referred to the morality police.
The gull-wing doors on the Tesla shoot up, allowing MBS and Brody to escape just before the car explodes.
Oh man, I just finished paying the kingdom back for this car. It's gonna take me the rest of my life to get another one.
Brody, if you help me traverse this desert and get to the Muqab, I will make sure all your debts are clear once I get my Dean coin back. Wallahi, bro. Please, on my life.
All right, I suppose.
The two set off on an arduous, scorching desert trial filled with conflict and character development before arriving slumped against one another at a Bedouin encampment just outside the Muqab. One of the Bedouins greets them.
Salam. What are you two doing all the way out here?
Greetings. My friend and I need to get to the Apple store inside the Muqab.
Oh, we cannot allow you to go in there.
What? Why?
Our people have been here living in the shadow of the Muqab, but we never go inside. It is too dangerous.
Dangerous?
Do you see how big this thing is?
He slaps the side of the Muqab and leans against it.
You could fit 42 Empire State Buildings in this baby. But when it was constructed, the entire interior was lined with screens and projectors to create a virtual environment. No one thought about the heat dissipation. Shortly after it opened, all that heat and radiation pretty much turned this thing into a giant microwave. No one survived. We are the descendants of the people who were in line to enter the Apple store that day.
Sorry, man. I guess this is the end of the road. But hey, we'll always have those incredible bonding moments in the desert forever. We could always franchise that whole Alt Bros cart in the subterranean city together, just like we talked about.
This can't be. There has to be a watch in there we can use. This is all my fault. I think Allah led me here to make it right.
But you heard the man. It's too dangerous in there.
Brody, you're my best immigrant friend. If Allah has destined me for destruction, then so be it. But I have to go in there if there's any hope of setting right all the things I did wrong. I'm going.
The Bedouin tries to get in his way. Brody stops the Bedouin from interceding.
Don't bother, man. Once he's made up his mind, it's made up. That's just the kind of guy he is.
MBS walks toward the entrance of the Muqab. Radiant light shines through the space around the door. It looks like the light energy alone could blow the structure apart.
All right. I guess this is it. This is my destiny.
Suddenly, a screech cuts through the air. MBS sees a hawk's silhouette briefly eclipse the sunlight as it flies overhead. Something falls from the hawk's talons and lands softly in front of MBS.
My watch!
He places the watch on his wrist. After a quick biometric authorization, his Dean Coin account appears to show an infinity symbol.
Alhamdulillah! Yes!
His watch dings, letting him know he got 50,000 Dean Coin for his prayer.
Whoa, buddy! I am so happy for you. This is great. I'm so excited for us to get back home and do all that good we talked about.
Yeah. Hey, man, listen. This has been real fun. Really. Maybe I'll see you around.
What the fuck? Are you kidding me, bro? I thought we had something.
Just then, a sleek Bentley aircraft descends on their position. We hear ImmigrantBot over the vehicle's announcement system. My prince, your Royal Palace subscription package has been renewed.
Hey, man, listen. It's been real. It's been real fun. Maybe I'll see you around.
What about that Nar in Tulum? It's not gonna shred itself.
MBS boards the aircraft.
I'll make dua for you. Inshallah. Wallahi, bro. Wallahi, I never forget a face.
The aircraft blows sand in everyone's face as it floats away.
Duped by another majestic mirage. Way to go, Brody.
The end.
Hi everyone, it's Yasmine. Thank you for listening to Techno-Jahannam. We really appreciate it. Up next, I'm thrilled to be joined by our very good friend, Abbas Rattani, for an interview about Muslim Futurism. So Abbas buys many things, and I'll let him introduce himself a little bit in addition. But he's a radiation oncologist. He's the founder of the creative collective Mipsterz, which Ahmed and I have been fortunate to collaborate with on a number of projects. And we're really excited to have him here today. Hi Abbas, how are you doing?
Hello, salamu alaikum. I'm so happy to be
Alaikum
on this
assalam.
show. I've been a long time listener. I mean, there aren't that many episodes, but I've listened to all of them.
That's actually very true. And he's actually texted feedback. He's a very supportive guy, I would say, overall, for all kind of creative endeavors. So we really appreciate that.
Well, yeah, I think it's because there's something just so that I find so like special about the creative voice. Like I think it comes from a unique place that other things that we emit into the world don't come from. And so anybody who has this like creative energy, I'm just like all about it.
Yeah.
I think passion, I think when people talk about things that they're passionate about, it comes out in a different cadence than like regular speech.
I agree. And I think that it's like hard with work to make time for that kind of passion. And it's always exciting when people are able to do that. Or like the rare case where their passion becomes like their livelihood. But even if not.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
I love, like, I live in Boston right now, and I meet all of these people who come in and out of Boston because their like education brings them here, and you just like hear and learn so many new things, and they speak about it in such a passionate way. I'm just like, this is some divine energy right here.
The Boston thing reminded me, I don't know if Ahmed has told you this story. Did you know that there's a photo that Ahmed took of you that I'm like in the back of from a Mipsterz event in Boston? And this is before we even knew each other. Like it was years before we would meet in North Carolina.
Yeah, I think he did tell me this.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
I have
very
that saved on my phone.
serendipitous.
Yeah, it's also a good testament, I
Wait,
think, to
send me the
Mipsterz.
photo.
I will.
Yeah.
It's a good testament to Mipsterz bringing people together. I think it's very sweet. Here, I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you like in between the takes, but yeah. Actually, I'll send it to you now. Ahmed can edit this.
I mean, these things are not heavily edited, so this whole conversation.
They actually are, honestly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, especially like my voice is a lot lower than it shows up on the podcast. He does a lot of work to like digitally alter it. But I just sent it to you. Look, it's like your New York subway hoodie. Do you see me like in the corner in the left?
I'm waiting for the radio waves to bring the photo to me. It's still like.
Oh, I sent it to my husband. Lol, let me send it to you. All right, while I'm sending this, the reason that we wanted to talk to you today, one, we just enjoy talking to you. But two, in January of 2022, Mipsterz put on a virtual conference, which I attended and really enjoyed. It was a really cool mix of academics and folks kind of in more creative sci-fi fields. And the whole conference was dedicated to exploring Muslim futurism. And I've honestly seen nothing like it. It was over 3 days. How many people attended again? Like a crazy number.
Almost 1,000, yeah.
Yeah, which is one of the really cool things I think about virtual conferences. And then that was followed up by an artist exhibition here in Durham, which was hosted at Duke this past August. So the city that Ahmed and I live in, that was also dedicated from a more kind of artistic angle to exploring Muslim futurism. So yeah, we just felt like you were a really perfect person to chat about this topic, and wanted to start off with the really basic question of how do you define Muslim futurism, or how do you think about that concept?
That's a good question. Obviously, it's changed over the years. When we first conceptualized this notion of like Muslim futurism was back in 2018, when we had this opportunity to be musicians in residence at an incubator, essentially in Oakland, California, called Zoo Labs. And at that time, I was really inspired by how jazz was such a transformative yet unique improvisationally, musical language. And there were some whisperings in the literature about how certain jazz musicians felt like jazz was an alien life form that, Black folks in the United States inherited, and it was by which they were communicating this like, alien knowledge. Because and I thought that really spoke to jazz because it was such a unique like musical form, and because it was improvisational, people were really communicating with you as if they were talking, to you live, and it wasn't something that was scripted the way, that, Western classical music is. And when we were in the studio, I kind of wanted to harness some of that energy, and at the same time, there was these female jazz musicians that were talking about how whenever there's not that many female jazz musicians to begin with, and when there was like a woman jazz musician in the room, they thought that was very cool. When you added more female jazz musicians in the room, it changed the energy a little bit. But she was saying that she would hold these sessions where it was just entirely female jazz musicians, and she said that the magic and the energy in the room was totally different. And if there was even one man in the room, it would screw up the energy. And with that same principle, I was like, what if we just had Muslim folks in one room and it was just us, and we got to be creative and let our, creative energies pour out. And that's when we started, conceptualizing a lot of these notions of Muslim futurism. And I think now it's still very much that. It was still very much, the next iteration of it when we started, putting together this project was very heavily influenced by Afrofuturism. But Ingrid Lafleur's definition of Afrofuturism, that this is not something that is time bound or not something that's from like the 1970s or 80s. This is a timeless framework that, we are living in some ways, and this is me kind of editorializing, but in many ways, minority folks are living in a white utopia, but for us, it feels like a dystopia. And especially Afrofuturism is emerging out of this, very constricting and limiting environment. And when you hear about early Nation of Islam, which I think are, considered, in my reading of it as futurists, they're thinking about a world and world building where they don't have to rely on white anything.
Right. Actually, it's so cool that jazz was kind of your intersection to this. It's a little bit past my timeline. My dissertation ends around 1950, but in the 1960s, there were a lot of Ahmadiyya converts like to Ahmadiyya Islam who were jazz musicians, and I think really kind of embodied a lot of the sort of like improvisational, both in terms of like music, but also in terms of like community and playing with identity that you're kind of talking about. So there's definitely like a history of that in the U.S.
I actually didn't know that. That's fascinating. What can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So Talib Dawood, I think, was like one prominent jazz musician. Dakota Stanton was his wife. She had a name for a bit that was a different name. I think she converted to Islam and then left the Ahmadiyya. But it was an interesting moment in time because like in the 1960s, the nation has become really prominent, the Nation of Islam. And the Ahmadiyya kind of are presenting themselves in the U.S. As like the orthodox face of Islam, which is fascinating because, I mean, today the Ahmadiyya are really heavily persecuted in South Asia. But at the time in the U.S., they were kind of like, hey, this nation is not authentically Muslim. Like, we are authentically Muslim. We've been here for longer. And we are kind of giving this definition of Islam that is more inclusive in a way. But a lot of jazz musicians happen to convert to that kind of particular branch of Islam, which is interesting.
Oh, wow. That's actually very cool. I mean, I really love the overlap with jazz because that really was our first, I guess, introduction to it. And I think most of what we think about Afrofuturism today, before, you know, the world building that, you know, Black Panther and Wakanda and all of that, like Disney stuff provides us, was musical.
Right. I like that, thinking about the music as sort of like sci-fi in a way, or futurist. I hadn't really thought of that frame before. I also love what you said about, because, you know, in a lot of places in the world, obviously, it isn't such a big deal to have just Muslims in a room. But in the US, it really is. And there's something I think about this in my classes a lot with my students, the idea of gaze. And, you know, I don't know if we can ever completely be out of a majority gaze, but I think it can be particularly liberatory to have these moments of rupture or these spaces that are really meant for other Muslims, or at least meant for folks who are down for Muslims to kind of express themselves.
Yeah, I think it is somewhat of a unique phenomenon, you know, as Muslims have left their countries like post-colonialism, um, and have tried to, you know, scratch out or etch out their own territories. But you also have to remember that there were Muslims in the United States that were brought over through like chattel slavery,
Of course, yeah.
that, you know, the Muslim experience is it's multifaceted, and
Absolutely.
and I think contains multitudes. And so I think, for example, like when we filmed Alhamdu Muslim Futurism, that short film
Can you say a little bit about that also, and like how it related to the other parts of the project? That came before everything else, right? Before like the conference at least, and before
yeah. So that film actually was born out of the mind's eye of myself and Sarah Al-Fagi, and then our like wonderful producers, Summer Zubairi, Akifa Khan, Sophie Khan, and Yusuf Siddiqui. And it basically features the contributions of almost 100 Muslims. And so when the music side of things started blossoming, we were like, okay, what is a visual to go with it? And Sar Al-Fagi was doing a lot of the art direction and the development and pre-production phase, you know, for a lot of this art development to like come about and envision what this film was. And we started like looking at how Star Wars essentially ripped off you know, like these Muslim landscapes. Like Tatooine is like filmed in Tunisia, and Naboo kind of looks like Istanbul, you know. And we were like, wait a minute, we like this is wild that even Western science fiction is thinking about a future that's majority Muslim lands. And a lot of the concepts, you know, Omid Safi is a big like Star Wars nerd, and you know, he really highlighted to me the ways in which, you know, Star Wars borrows and maybe even steals from like, you know, the Islamic mystical tradition mixed in with some of the Taoism. And as you know from like Toshihiko Izutsu's work, there's a lot of that like overlap between Islam, Taoism, Buddhism, and that like mystical realm. And so we wanted to capture that in the film. and this is way before the conference. And as you can imagine, a lot of these ideas that I'm talking about will soon inform the conference, you know, from
Right.
Afrofuturism to Islamic mysticism and then Palestinian liberationism, which, you know, I'll get into shortly. But we we went to Joshua Tree. That was our first place that we wanted to shoot because it had that like desolate next planet vibe, and we invited a bunch of like LA Muslims from all backgrounds. You know, and these were Muslims who were either converts. They were Muslims who were descendants of slavery from the United States. These were Muslims from like West Africa, East Africa, South Asia, the Far East, whatever, geographically. And everyone on the premises was Muslim, and just all from various Muslim backgrounds. And the conversations, the vibrance in the expression was very much felt, and we just enjoyed being out there in the desert. And I don't even know if it really counts as a desert. It's desolate and desert-like, but unless you've been to Joshua Tree, you know what I'm talking about. And
I haven't, but I've seen the video and it's beautiful.
Yeah. And but there was like an energy of just like all of us being Muslim in that space, and talking about our experiences. And it wasn't like we were just constantly talking about Islam. I think when people think about like what's it like being Muslim in a closed space, no one's just like, oh, let me share my viewpoints on Islam all the time.
Right.
But there's an energy that we are different from the status quo, and that we are unique, and we are bringing an alternative that is uniquely ours.
And do you think there's like a level of intentionality with that kind of space in particular, where people are coming to do a project like that when they're coming into a space that's relatively empty and kind of bringing their energy to the space?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think that's what was I think cool about it, because people also had varying levels of like practice, So it'll be like Doher time or Asr time, and some of us will like break away to pray, and others, not. But nobody was really in each other's like face about it the way like my MSA experience was,
Right.
And my MSA experience was like a lot of policing. And it was just like, it was, that, what was it called? The like Zimbardi like prison, the prison study, the famous like
the Stanford
psychology.
prison? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
The Stanford prison study where they basically assigned roles to
This is your MSA
students.
experience.
Yeah, it really was.
Honestly, I also had a terrible MSA experience. I don't know why I'm laughing. I definitely resonate with that.
Yeah, I was like, man, this is gonna drive me. Oh yeah, Zimbardo was the professor's name that put this together. But essentially, I think there were roles that these like fellow early 20-year-olds held. That we're the kind of the Muslim policers, and you guys are the congregants, and it very much like felt that way. And I think in college. But to finally like break free from all of that, and all of us just be as we are and accepted as we are, and Muslim in this creative space, that's like futurism, like to me, that's like what an ideal planet where we get to just be ourselves exists. And so I was curious to see what other people thought about this idea, and then I put it out into the world like through this conference that was funded by Doris Duke, which was very generous of them. Yeah, shout out to them, really, because I don't really know of any other philanthropic organization that's putting that kind of weight and money behind Muslim creative projects. So, we partnered with Columbia, Colorado College, University of Miami, Duke, Center for Afrofuturist Studies, and we put together that conference that you were mentioning to kind of explore some of those initial feelings and ideas that were germinating as that short film came together.
I know that at least in conversations around Afrofuturism and Afropessimism, which I'm by no means an expert in, I think I have like a very passing understanding, but they're sometimes like seen as two sides of the same coin, like Afropessimism being this understanding that life in the U.S. in particular might not get better, particularly for Black folks, but you could actually, other people have expanded that to talk about other people of color in the U.S. as well. And then Afrofuturism being this kind of imagining of a better future. And then there are other people who envision Afrofuturism as having to do with, let's kind of think with every possibility that we can. Like, let's think as openly as possible with the hope that that might change our current reality. Where do you see Muslim Futurism kind of in your own personal understanding? This might not, speak for everyone who's at the conference or everyone whose art was showed at the exhibit, but where do you see Muslim Futurism on that kind of envisioning the future versus kind of avoiding the realities of the present kind of scale?
So, could you define Afro-pessimism for me? Because
Yeah,
I'm familiar with it from like Wilderson's work, but I don't know if like just I guess maybe even for the audience, you know.
absolutely. And I hope I'm doing this justice. I'm probably not, to be honest, but it's basically this idea, as I understand it, that there's such embedded structural violence in the United States. Not that all movement is futile, but that only so much movement realistically will happen within the current structures that we live within. And that it's okay to acknowledge that, that it's not defeatist to say, the United States is only capable of so much reform, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a good point. I think our keynote, the opening keynote speaker, Vanessa Taylor, spoke to this
Mm-hmm.
largely, which I encourage folks to check out. But it really was. I think we walked. So let me back up a little bit. When we released the film, it was right around the time of the Sheikh Jarrah like home invasions and the just violence that Palestinians were facing in Jerusalem. And I think this was like right around Eid time. And when Eid comes around, um, you still have Palestinians celebrating Eid in its full glory, and they're finding joy despite the oppression, despite the violence that they're being subjected to. And that feeling of that, the Palestinian liberation movement has constantly infused and like hope into this thinking of, even in the face of oppression, they will find happiness. They will find ways to be happy and to celebrate. And I think that's particularly powerful. And so when you ask like what informs Muslim futurism, I know I gave you like multiple different answers, but these are all the things that kind of culminate behind the thinking. But to your question, when the conference came about, I, was not even anticipating or expecting to hear some of the very profound things that I heard that bring in, Afro pessimist thought and that bring in Afrofuturist thought. And I thought Vanessa Taylor's piece about this was very important. And then, secondly, there was a talk, I think the next day by Camilla Pickett and
I missed that
I
one.
believe it was Rashida James Sadia. They co-authored this piece called "I Y'all Be Easy," about this fictive kinship that non-Black Muslims have with Black Muslims. And so the idea behind the paper, and I'm not doing it entirely justice, I do also recommend folks listen to that session. All these sessions have been recorded and on YouTube. If you can't find it, obviously hit up Mipsterz. But in that paper, um, they basically say that in a Muslim future, if there's a Muslim planet, there will still be prejudice towards Black Muslims because anti-Black racism very much still exists in Muslim communities. And so there's this fake or fictive kinship, that exists around all of us being Muslim. And it's like kumbaya, everybody having a good time, ahlan wa sahlan, we all vibing together. But really, that falls apart because of this like deep-seated anti-Black racism that exists within the communities. And I thought, that's a wake-up call. Like we're all in this conference together. Everyone's like kumbaya, we're having an awesome time. This is great. Like, let's imagine this future, that we can really strive towards and whatever. But there are things in the now that we are contributing to the violence of other Muslims in our community.
Right. There's eternal community dynamics that perhaps would not be solved in the kind of Muslim future. Right.
Exactly. So what Muslim futurism is today, it's more, at least to me, is more or less a framework that incorporates all these other frameworks, but a reminder of our present, of our now, you know. And I don't think, you know, and Zara Ayubi, you know, one of the panelists and one of our advisors, used to say, you know, whose utopia are we even talking about here? And any formation of a utopia is somebody else's dystopia. You know, as you can imagine, 1979 Iran, you know, you have this uprising and everyone's rallying behind Ayatollah Khomeini, and you're like, oh, we're about to create like an ideal society
Right,
here,
right.
right? But how much of that society, even we look at it today, has been a dystopia for so many? You know, the biggest example is for the Baha'i community. You know, like definitely they're living in a dystopia, despite the like maybe noble like intentions behind a revolution and creating something, you know, unique. And so that's something we constantly, I think, have to be aware of, is like, you know, whose dystopia are we creating by
Right.
trying to forge together a utopia?
I hadn't considered this before, but as we're talking, I wonder, even outside of these kind of set of interrelated projects, do you think Mipsterz as a whole could be kind of framed as a Muslim futurist project, the entire organization?
Man, that's a good question. I think we've been trying to figure out what the heck Mipsterz is for 11 years now. You know, obviously it started off as a tongue-in-cheek kind of critique to the ways in which Muslims were organizing, right? And the ways in which Muslims were coming together. And they just like didn't feel like we were really, you know, getting to what it means to be Muslim in the US and that like experience. And I think now we've moved towards really enabling and empowering other Muslim creatives and just like giving them the tools to get their creativity out into the world. And that's like really what our emphasis has been. But thinking about like, is this a futurist project? I mean, in some ways, yeah, probably. I mean, it's
I'm thinking
I
just the
don't
kind
know.
of, to me, I'm thinking about the sort of double act of one, reflecting back the community that you have, but also aspiring to the community that you want to be.
Mm. Oh, I
That
love
part,
that.
yeah, that part feels very futurist to me. Actually, the iftar that we hosted, that was sponsored by Mipsterz alongside several other organizations here in Durham this last weekend, for me felt like a kind of coming home moment in that way, that I was sort of like, oh, like this is a space that I feel comfortable, and this is a public space that is in the heart of the city, in the American South, as it should be. And that to me feels like really like just a beginning. Like I know that it's not the first. I know that there have been other projects like that. The Muslim community here is very diverse and very vibrant. But yeah, it kind of felt like this is cool, and also there should be a lot more of this and a lot more kind of varieties and different permutations of this.
So tell me about this. I mean, you know, Caravanserai, you know, was the is the project that, you know, Ahmed started and put together,
Right.
and then it ended up like falling under the umbrella of Mipsters, because I was like, yo, you need to do more of these, and how can we, you know, get more energy behind this and resources and money and whatever. But you guys are also not, you guys are veterans to the, you know, bringing the community together. You guys host events all the time. I remember after the exhibit that we had at Durham, you know, at Durham, but at Duke University, that exhibit, that was the art exhibit for Muslim Futurism, that was sponsored by Doris Duke. Again, shout out. But we all met up at your house and just like had this amazing time. We like intellectualized, we like put together fake, you know, SNL sketches. And when you put this iftar together and you have this like community, you know, come together at that scale, what did it like feel like? You know, I know what it felt like, what it would feel like for me, and what it has felt like for me, but what did it feel like for you guys?
Yeah, I can't speak for Ahmed. I'll have to have him talk about that another time, and I think we should probably, in general, have him chat about Caravanserai now that I'm thinking about it, because I know that he has a lot to say. But for me, I think that I've often felt myself, and I find a lot of people that I'm drawn to have felt this way, sort of on the fringe of Muslim communities or in between communities. And it's really lovely to find a space with a lot of other folks that feel kind of like misfits, that really identify with their faith and draw a lot of strength from it, but haven't found that many institutional places that they're comfortable in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that are still practicing. And that's not at all meant as a judgment. I think that I have no issue personally with folks who identify just as culturally Muslim. My own like range of practice varies more than I would care to admit. So it's not like a passing judgment sort of thing, but it felt really unique and special to be in a place that felt so open-minded, or at least was endeavoring to be that way. But that we also were going to pray for Maghrib, you know, and that people were fasting and, you know, excited to break their fast. And that all of that could kind of be true in the same space felt really nice. And also, I think I had a lot of assumptions before I moved to North Carolina. I grew up in Brooklyn, and I never really thought about North Carolina being a place where there were Muslims, which shame on me. I should know better, especially because I've moved around quite a lot. I went to college in Wisconsin. There are Muslims everywhere in this country. We're not located in just one geographic space. But I think the community here, I mean, I'm sure I'm biased, but it's particularly just really lovely and really open to organizing. I think the 2015 R3 winter Chapel Hill shootings, which were an awful, awful tragedy, kind of galvanized the community in ways that are really unique and have made people kind of willing to take up space and understand the importance of taking up space.
You know, I like that you say that because there's that energy that y'all are even drawn to of when a community comes together, and it comes together just to be, you know, just to exist and enjoy. You know, Ahmed's chai, I know, is very much a incentive, but in the absence of that, the just being with each other, I think, is just a powerful unspoken, like a metaphysical energy there that I very much like value, and I know you guys
Absolutely.
value a lot, you know. And I think Caravanserai had that magic to do that, you know. And it doesn't even matter the number of people that come out, but everybody comes there with a wholesomeness, you know, and a wholeness that I don't think other spaces really foster, you know. And if you think, and I remember in college, because I didn't really have the Muslim community, because of what I mentioned earlier,
Right.
and I wasn't, and you know, being, you know, practicing myself, I'm not, you know, at the clubs, I'm not like, you know, at frat parties or whatever. So my Friday, Saturday nights, I'm like, what am I gonna do with this time? And we really just came together over food and coffee and tea and what have you, late nights, and we would just have the same conversations that one would expect at, you know, these caravanserai events. Or,
I
you
think
know,
that
I'm
was
sure
actually something that Ahmed mentioned in terms of the kind of ultimate dream of maybe one day having a brick and mortar caravanserai is a kind of a place that he felt he didn't have growing up, like where young Muslims could kind of gather and just naturally mingle and meet and talk.
Oh, 100%. And I don't know if I've told Ahmed my ideas about opening up like a brick and mortar like storefront, to that extent, but that would be dope, you know, like that would be really awesome. And then, you know, what's interesting is that, like, you know, what's interesting is that when Black Panther came out, you had a lot of non-black folks just resonate with that film very heavily. And I know there was some like backlash when like white people were doing Wakanda Forever and stuff, but if you think about it, that's also something remarkable, right? Like this is a story, an entirely black story, um, with with which in America, you know, Disney probably wrote this off as like, oh, this is a black movie, and people still do that now, right? And in Hollywood, they still label shows by the race, but nobody's calling, you know, Seinfeld or Friends a white show. You know, they're like, oh, that's just like our new like primetime lineup. But to see people that weren't black to be like, I resonate with this story. We saw this again with the show Reservation Dogs, which is a show entirely about a very unique indigenous experience in the United States, you know. And then you have non-indigenous people being like, this show is awesome. You know, I resonate with this show. And that's how people felt about the show Rami, for example. It's like they make so many Muslim references in that show, and non-Muslims are like, oh, have you seen Rami? That show's great. And I'm like, what do you know about, you know? And that, to me, I think there's something special in the resonating with that human experience.
Right. There's something about, yeah, sorry to interrupt, but I think ironically there's something about specificity that actually makes things more relatable, because you're not trying to constantly translate for an audience. And if they miss one or two references, they get the overall feeling of community and of whatever particular context they're watching.
Yeah, and that's why I think like having a storefront wouldn't just speak to Muslims. Like you don't have to open it up to like Muslims only. I think
Absolutely not. Yeah.
non-Muslims would be like, yo, this is awesome. What the heck is this? You know, like
Right.
I am like now changed forever because you introduced this to me, you know?
Right. It's become a bit of like a vibe spot with its own interesting associations. But I know Kahwa House, which started in Michigan and now has a branch in Brooklyn. I've only been to the Brooklyn one. It's a very big like Muslim scene, but it's also not exclusively just Muslims. There are plenty of folks just showing up because the food is great and the vibes are, fun.
Yeah, you got to be careful because the last time white folks were introduced to spices, countries were taken over.
It's true. It's true.
White people were like, wait a minute. We don't have to boil our food. Back in the day, even still today, white people will just like boil their food, add a little salt, and be like, voila, this is a cuisine.
Right. And then you'll get the like Starbucksification of chai, which is a tragedy.
Yeah. Holy crap. What is that mess? They're not doing the double boil method. They're not really steeping the fresh ginger in the water before the milk is. And, Ahmed knows these techniques. He's a seasoned, pun intended, chai guy.
Can I admit a crime? I do not like Starbucks chai the way I like Ahmed's chai, obviously. It tastes kind of like soap, Starbucks chai, but I do like it on occasion. It's its own kind of thing, but it's not chai.
Damn. You just put yourself on notice.
I know.
I didn't have to say anything.
All right. I think just to wrap up here, I'm curious, like, what does the future of this project look like? Do you have more in this particular, like the Alhamdu video, the conference, the artist exhibit? Is there more planned for this kind of iteration of this Mipsterz project?
Yes. And what was interesting was there were some patrons who came to the exhibit, and there were these two old white ladies, and they flagged I think Yusuf, and they said, what do you say to the people who do not see themselves in this exhibit? What do you say to the people who don't see themselves represented in the artwork? Huh? What do you say to those guys? And I like slowly walked away from the conversation. It's like, I do not have the mental bandwidth or energy to deal with this right now. But Yusuf, handled it very well. And he was like, yeah, that's precisely the point. I mean, every museum exhibit we go to, we do not see ourselves represented at all. I mean, it's just like all Western European, white, American, all this like, and when I say American, I mean like white Christian American, like artwork everywhere, And I think there was a study that came out that says that maybe like 1 to 4, I have to fact check this, but 1 to 4% of contemporary artists are represented in museum spaces. Now, when was the last time you went to a museum space and you saw like contemporary art from Muslim artists? I do not remember a single time. I just see when they talk about Islamic art, they talk about these old like antiquated potteries and things like that. But what it made me realize was that's precisely the point of this exhibit. It wasn't really meant for you. It wasn't meant for you to be seen or you to be represented. It was to provide a cultural alternative to the status quo. And I think Mipsterz now, I think we really felt that. And I think now what we're planning on doing is regular shows for the community to showcase the stuff that's happening within our community, like almost
so
like
not
a FUBU.
Not the exhibit in Durham traveling, but different kind of curated exhibits.
So I'm happy you brought that up. Yes, the exhibit is definitely traveling and it's growing larger and it's like getting a life of its own. And we're planning for a big show in 2024 in Colorado Springs, in Colorado College. They've been very generous advisors as well as mentors and facilitators of this project. So you will see the exhibit again in all of its glory. I think they're also going to teach classes around Muslim Futurism at Colorado College.
Interesting.
In 2024. They're very a progressive university. I mean, they were the first to like pull out of the US News World Report kind of like rankings and really like, challenge how we think about education. So it's been an awesome blessing. And I'm working with like the chair of the religion department, the psychology department, sociology, English, etc., to put this thing together. But like in between now in 2024, I think we're doing these like monthly shows on the last Sunday of every month. that people can just like tune into over Zoom, and every month we'll feature like new string of guests.
So kind of just like a variety sort of show.
Exactly.
Nice.
It's actually based off of a show that we did at the Shed and the Kennedy Performing Arts Center called the Good Fun Muslim Friends Club. And it featured one of our like very favorite people, Iman Abdul Karim, who also has a great podcast called the Name It Pod. And she was one of our first guests, and she was a student of Zara Ayubi's as
Iman's
well.
great.
And Iman, yeah. So
she's now a PhD student at Yale.
Yes, exactly. She's so awesome, and that same show format, which was a variety show, is going to be coming to like the virtual format.
Nice. Thank you so much. This was really fun. Anything else that you wanted to say?
Other than the fact that I love you guys,
we love
and
you too.
Ramadan Mubarak and Eid Mubarak, and I love this podcast because the energy, it's like so clearly organic and wholesome, because it's not like there's no like agenda, it's like you two being in love and also like intellectually in love, just like sharing that with the world. I think it's like awesome. Like I listen to you guys on my commute, like in my car, and I feel like you guys are in the car with me, and I get to just like listen.
That's so sweet. Thank you for always being so supportive. We really appreciate it.
Oh, it's easy to be supportive of wonderful folks like y'all.
All right, bye.